So good morning or afternoon, I should say, everyone. It's right on the brink. Thanks for joining us. My name is Maureen Kerner. I'm with the Office of Water Programs at California State University, Sacramento, fondly known as Sac State, Sacramento State. And we are pleased to welcome you to the second of our two spring 2026 water seminar series presentations. If you're less familiar with our organization, the Office of Water Programs is a training, research, and technical assistance focused organization on water quality and water resources. And we host two seminar presentations each year in the fall and two in the spring. So in keeping with that schedule, we'll have two more presentations coming up this fall, and you can stay tuned for more details. I do want to note that all of our presentations are recorded and made available on the Office of Water Programs website for later viewing. And today's presentation will run about 40 minutes. We'll follow that up with about 20 minutes for as many questions as possible. You can submit your questions by emailing seminarquestions@owpcsus.edu. You can take a screenshot of that address now that's on the screen, or we'll be posting it throughout the talk in the chat, so you can grab it at that time too. So it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, David Guy, who will be presenting on the Northern California's role in adapting to a hotter, drier future. So as the president of Northern California's Water Association, NCWA, David G. Guy cultivates a shared vision in the Sacramento Valley for a vibrant way of life. Working closely with leaders in the region and an interdisciplinary team of experts, NCWA seeks to sustain a world-renowned mosaic of natural and human abundance and functional beauty that is supported by meandering rivers and creeks. For decades, David has worked closely with policymakers to more deeply connect people in rural and urban areas by showcasing special attributes of California's precious rivers and landscapes, including the Sacramento Valley, Yosemite National Park, Redwood National Park, and the Sierra Nevada. In this role, he calls on his experience in law, geological sciences, communications, and working with amazing people. David and his wife have traveled extensively, and they have split their time between the Sacramento Valley and Sierra Nevada. They love food and cooking, the outdoors, skiing, music, traveling, and sharing experiences with all their three children. So with that, welcome, David. I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Maureen, and good afternoon. Boy, what a great group. Thanks everybody for joining this afternoon. Happy Friday, and as we head into the Memorial Day weekend, it's a great honor to be here with you, and a real big fan of the OWP program, and really nice opportunity to share some thoughts with you today. So I've been asked to talk a little bit about Northern California's role in adapting to a higher, hotter, drier future, and I know that's something that everybody on this call has been thinking about in probably different ways. So I'm going to share some thoughts today, and would sure love to hear your thoughts, your questions, and this is a really neat dialogue that we have going around this topic, and look forward to hearing more from it. So I have the great pleasure to work for the Northern California Water Association, as Maureen mentioned, and that means get to work throughout the Sacramento River Basin, a real special place, real special region, and get to work with some really talented people and people that really care about this region, as we'll be talking about through the region. And so our organization, we represent about 85 water suppliers, the local governments, the cities throughout the region, and obviously making sure that we have water for a variety of beneficial purposes that we'll be talking about today. And I think I have the pleasure to work with many of you in these endeavors. Everything in water is obviously a team effort, and you'll be hearing more about that today. So one of the things that I want to do today is you're going to see as we go through a PowerPoint that I'm trying to have a little bit of kind of fun with some of this. I'm a big fan of art, and so you're going to see a lot of different styles today of PowerPoints, as well as some art that I'm going to share that I think really helps paint a picture of this region. I just think the artists that grace this region really tell us a lot about the region. We learn a lot about the region through their work. And so this piece here is a recent Tim Collin piece, for those of you who know Tim in the area, and really a neat picture to kind of start that we're going to start here at the lower end of Sacramento River Basin, and then we'll be doing a little bit of a flyover as we go throughout the day. And then also, you're going to see some different styles of PowerPoints as well. And the reason for that is quite honestly, we have a variety of different programs that we are part of. And each one of those programs has some special branding, some special style associated with it. So hopefully that will be kind of obvious as we go through today. I think to frame the conversation today, I know originally talking about with Kevin and Maureen is, of course, I think people are excited about what is SB 72 going to bring to the California Water Plan. And I think there's a real energy right now around the new California Water Plan for 2028 and what that is going to look like. So I'm going to just kind of start with that as the frame as we go forward. And obviously, is what we're really thinking about is how do we work through, and particularly in the Sacramento River Basin. I think we're really known for our flooding, but then we also have had some droughts along the way. And how do we manage water through those dynamics and make sure that we have water supply for all of these different purposes, and also make sure that we protect public safety during the flooding events. So I think folks are probably in tune a little bit with the water plan. If not, boy, check out the website, check out a lot of the material that Department of Water Resources is kicking out. Joel and the team over there, I think, are doing a really nice job in kind of rolling this out, and we're looking forward to working with them on that. I think the piece that has received the most attention, of course, is the third bullet there. It talks about the 9 million acre feet of additional water supply. That was in SB 72, and I think is really kind of providing a catalyst to this water plan going forward, that we need to get serious, we need to be ambitious, and we need to think broadly. And so I'm going to share some thoughts today from Northern California on what some of that might look like. And again, this is a neat dialogue, and so I'm looking forward to questions, looking forward to thoughts, and working with a lot of you in that effort. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a flyover. One of the great things I hope folks get when you get to fly into Sacramento Airport, you get to fly over the Sacramento Valley, and I think that's one of the real treats of flying into the region, just to see how beautiful it is. And the region, obviously, in my view, is very special. We have about 3 million people. It's one of the least populated parts of the state, but we do have 3 million people. About half of those reside, of course, in the urban Sacramento area. We have about 2 million acres of farmland, very large farming area that the economic engine for the region depends upon farming, as well as much of the biodiversity that we'll be talking about. We have 7 national wildlife refuges, about 50 state wildlife areas, some of which are world renowned. I'll share a painting later of Gray Lodge, which is obviously something people come from all over the world to see. We have 4 runs of salmon, the only place in the world that happens, and that is a big part of the work that is being done in the valley, is to improve conditions for salmon in harmony with the water supply for other purposes. And obviously hydropower becoming increasingly important over time. And then I think what we all are going to probably be doing this weekend is, I'm guessing, recreating around water in some form. There's many forms of recreation that surround water. Probably the most important thing to people at the end of the day with respect to their water resources. The theme that I think about as we kind of work around the region is this idea of bringing together healthy rivers, landscapes, and communities. And we'll be kind of talking a little bit about that today. The Northern California Water Association Board of Directors last year adopted a 5-year plan around this concept. And happy to share that. It's on our website as well for those who are interested. It's a very detailed 5-year plan. And then, of course, within that, we get to work with the board of directors to help us prioritize which pieces we work on as we go forward each year. And so it's a really nice roadmap for the work that we do. To me, when you start thinking about what that roadmap needs to look like, of course, we always need to start with making sure that we have drinking water for people, and that we have safe drinking water. The human right to water is, as some like to refer to it, and that obviously is something important in this region as well. There's 2 elements of this larger vision that we have in the Sacramento Valley. The first is what we call the North State Drinking Water Solutions Network. Been working on this for a little over a decade, in basically connecting the state's policy apparatus, largely through things like the SAFER program at the State Water Board. Water Board has been a very good partner in this, working with locals, and many of these are, of course, disadvantaged communities. bringing that kind of combination together. So we have a North State drinking water with the idea of trying to make sure that people are connected. And the real objective, of course, is to there's a list, of course, of failing water systems that the State Water Board holds. And there's other lists as well, but the goal is to make sure that we bring all of the communities in this region off that list. We have a deep commitment, I think, in this region to make sure that everybody has safe drinking water going forward, and a lot of energy that gets put into this program. And again, in part because we do have, there's a lot of different definitions, but disadvantaged or underrepresented communities is a good portion of the Sacramento River Basin. And so we need to make sure that not only do we have the water supplies, but that we have the mechanism so that people can operate and maintain their systems going forward. And I think that's one of the programs that I think OWP does really well, is your program to help in this space with technical assistance and all that. So really a shout out to the program there at Sac State, and a lot of good work coming out of that. The second piece is obviously working through the watershed, and we in the Sacramento Valley have two coalitions that work full time to make sure that we have high quality water. The Sacramento Valley Water Quality Coalition, which Bruce Howdeshelt in our office oversees and manages, working with folks throughout the region. And then there's also a California Rice Commission coalition that we partner very closely with, and they do their program for rice. And we have this for all of the other irrigated agriculture in the region, and work very closely together on that. And again, the goal is really to make sure that we have high quality water for the aquatic ecosystem, that we have high quality water, of course, for drinking water quality and for urban needs, and then also that we have the right quality for farming as well. So the combination of these two programs, I think, work together to make sure that we have high quality water in the region. And this is an ongoing effort. I don't think this is one of those programs that it will be there forever, just to make sure that we do this right going forward. Second piece that I want to touch on, and I'll go into several elements of this, is, of course, surface water stability. One of the things I think we've really worked on over the last several decades in the Sacramento Valley is trying to make sure that we have stable surface water supplies, again, across those weather extremes that we touched on earlier. The water resources managers in the region came together back in about 2011, and really started to think about how do we want to manage water in for the future in this region. And so we commissioned some work. We did a lot of work around a report that was efficient water management for regional sustainability. And I think this has really been a nice kind of a framework, a way to think about water management in a whole variety of ways. Obviously, Sacramento Valley is a flow-through system. As we all know, the water is like it's like a big funnel, and that means that all the water ultimately goes through the bridge that we showed earlier with the Tim Collin painting, unless we're in a flood stage and we're going down through the bypasses. But it's a big funnel, and we have a flow through system, and of course that really helps guide the way you manage water and how you reuse water throughout the region. And then we really used kind of that triple bottom line, as people refer to it in the sustainability lexicon, to make sure that we have economic, ecological, and social, those parts of the stool addressed through water management. So this was kind of the roadmap. And this is a really neat painting of also of Tim Collin out by Conway Ranch that love to share a recent painting, and just some really nice work by Tim. So one of the things that over the last 2 decades in this region is that the on each individual river and creek, there have been basically arrangements put together by the leaders in those particular creeks and rivers on how we manage the flows for all the various purposes on those creeks. And this has just been a real neat process over the last couple of decades to bring this together. And a couple of examples. There's been a recent, most of you are well aware of the Sacramento River Water Forum, and obviously that agreement coming together here very recently for the Water Forum 2.0. Really a neat piece of work and effort that will guide this region into the future. Similarly, on the Yuba River, the Yuba Accord was a 25-year extension of that was approved by the State Water Board late last year. Some just really neat work being done on the Yuba River with the Yuba Water Agency and various partners throughout the state on that. On the Sacramento River, the settlement contractors put together a drought protection program to kind of look at ways to manage flows from Lake Shasta and on the river particularly during those extremely critically dry years, which has been a large challenge. Some neat work on the Poudre Creek through the decree over there, and then some of the recent work in building that out. So I think the point of this is I think we have a really nice foundation of these different arrangements that have been tailored for each one of these rivers and creeks, and I think will help guide us as we go forward. And these will continue to evolve. And I think this really captures the essence of trying to make sure that we're managing water on all of these systems for multiple benefits. And we learn from that and continue to get better at it all the time. This is a picture most of you probably recognize out near Getty Park on the American River. This is a Miles Herman painting, local artist, really good friend, and just a wonderful artist, and just love the colors in this particular piece. And I think this is kind of gives you an example of why the Water Forum process is so important to the Sacramento region. So the next piece of this, in thinking about surface water stability, is of course the Bay Delta, and I think we all know the Bay Delta has been kind of the battleground in California water for the last 53 years, essentially. And it's just been somewhat intractable, a variety of parties working together. And so I think one of the things that we've said is how do we bring stability to the Delta? So some years ago, the water suppliers in uh, California, pretty much from Redding to the San Diego, came together and put together a program that we're calling Healthy Rivers and Landscapes. It was at one point called Voluntary Agreements, and now being called Healthy Rivers and Landscapes. And it's really a neat concept of bringing together a combination of the flows, building on the flows that we just talked about on each individual river and creek, but bringing some flows together that go into the delta, and then integrating that, of course, with a variety of habitat and landscape type improvements. And it's integrating that water and landscape that I think is really what has been missing in that process over the last some years. I think we can all probably agree that the State Water Board process over the years have not really led to improved fish conditions or wildlife conditions or improved water supply reliability. So our thought was, why don't we try something different and work through that? So we are currently in the process, of course, of working with the State Water Board in that process. There is a Bay Delta Plan update that we're hoping will be approved by the Water Board later this year. And we'll have as part of this the Healthy River and Landscape program. And that includes a variety of habitat programs on each river, creek, and floodplain in the region. There's already a whole series of projects that have been completed. Many of these started in 2018 and have been going forward. So I think provide a really good kind of momentum showing for this process. And of course, then there are going to be functional flows on each river that will be timed to benefit and integrate with that habitat. And this is, I think, really the essence of the Healthy River and Landscape program. There will also be a governance feature that will help bring people together, as well as a science component that we think is going to give this Bay Delta Plan update some real promise as we go forward. It's going to be an 8-year program to start. We hope that that will be a nice foundation to carry that further into the future. And really, this concept of bringing flows and landscape together is what seems to create the combination for fish and wildlife that we think we need. And as you can see, there's a series of many folks throughout California, from Redding to the San Diego area, support this. Pretty much support from all local elected officials, from people throughout the state, and obviously the governor's office has been very supportive of this and wanting to make this a priority this year. So to finish this year, so looking forward to this program moving forward. Next piece with respect to surface water stability is I think it's safe to say over the last several decades that a lot of the challenges to water management have been a result of kind of the conditions for salmon, particularly. And we have the four runs of salmon. And so there's been a real concerted effort, I think, to look at this holistic approach to deal with all life cycles of salmon and to look at all parts of the system. To do that. So there's a real concerted effort throughout the region. Many of you, I suspect, are working in this space to help improve conditions for salmon, give them a valley that they recognize and can to hopefully start to thrive on. And one of the elements of that holistic approach that I think is particularly significant in the Sacramento Valley is advancing floodplain reactivation. And this is an effort that's really, I think, gained a lot of momentum and one of the most exciting things I've ever had the pleasure to work as part of. And of course, the idea is really to put water on the landscape during the fall and winter months to help with fish and wildlife. Obviously, public safety has to come first. So all the work that's been done with the flood agencies, that will be first. But there are times, of course, when we're not in flood stage and we can be thinking about using the bypasses and the lands a little bit differently. And is what the real objective here is we know that life all starts with this idea of sun, land, and water. And so how do we best integrate that concept? And the floodplains are just a really important place that that has happened. Some of you have probably seen these images before coming out of UC Davis and our friends at Cal Trout and others, where it basically shows the food on the floodplain is significantly higher than it is in the river system. I think the fish are starving in many instances, and so I think giving them a food source on the floodplain, of course, that was what natural systems did. We know that this area was underwater primarily during the early part of the year, pretty much every year, and then those waters would recede as we went into the spring. And so I think we're really just trying to mimic how do we kind of mimic that system and do it in a way that has, with 40 million people. And so the floodplains and the food source is important, of course, because it just means we have healthier fish that hopefully can get through the system. And the healthier the fish, then the better rates of return. So I think there's a real concerted effort going on through floodplain forward. Here's an example I mentioned earlier. This is Gray Lodge, a National Wildlife Refuge, also a Miles Herman painting that I just love. And we have this hanging in our office. If anybody'd like to see the original, just a gorgeous picture. This is obviously the north side of the Sutter Buttes. And so through the floodplain program, there's kind of four basic categories that are being worked on. Obviously, the bypasses, again, critical flood protection systems when we need those during those flood stages. But the rest of the time, of course, those bypasses are primarily sitting there. And how do we better utilize those assets? So the thought is, how do we get those bypasses more active? And you can do that through a combination of lowering the weir system through some notches and getting that water out, and then a combination of some management within the bypass to help kind of grow the food and the safe haven that fish will do. The California Rice Commission has a really neat program for rice lands, and that includes some of the rice lands in the bypasses as well as rice lands on the so-called dry side of the levee. And there we can grow food in the rice lands during the winter time. It's kind of an extension of the fall rice decomp period, and then that food can then be flushed back into the river system for the benefit of fish. Wildlife refuges, of course, are such a critical part of this region, and really the water on that landscape is obviously so important for all kinds of species and biodiversity. And then a lot of work being done in the riparian zones, whether it's an oxbow, whether it's a side channel, a lot of work that's being done, I think, to really improve it. And all this comes together through a portfolio that the Floodplain Forward group has developed kind of from the ground up, so that we are doing this work based on what people think we can do in the region to scale up to a larger program. And again, the partnership that through Floodplain Forward is amazing. It's leading landowners in the Sacramento Valley. It's leading conservation organizations, water suppliers, local governments, academia, researchers, the whole suite of things. And this is just an amazing coalition. And there's a variety of films for anybody who's interested in seeing this. We have a document, Floodplain Reconnected, that talks a lot about this. This came together last year when the state and federal agencies all got together, the leaders of the respective agencies, and we had agencies sign an MOU to commit to floodplain forward going forward. And this has been a really neat effort from the highest leadership levels as we go forward. So, really excited by that. A piece that's also really important for the region and thinking about the salmon going forward is the so-called bridge group. This is a partnership of farmers and fishermen. This is the commercial fishermen, the charter boat folks, as well as the sport fishermen in the river have really come together to work with the farmers in the region through this bridge group and looking at ways how do we help fisheries and salmon, particularly in the region. The commercial fishing or the fishing in this valley, of course, is primarily the fall run. And so there is a large emphasis upon making sure that we think about the fall run and what we can do to improve conditions for the fall run. But obviously, the fall runs kind of related to both the spring and the winter run, which are the two endangered runs or the two listed runs, I should say. And so there's a real comprehensive effort to think about how do we improve conditions for salmon working through this bridge group. And the great thing about this work that's being done, whether it's through the floodplains or the bridge group, is that we can do all this in harmony. You can farm in the spring and the summer in this region by putting water on the landscape. And then by putting that water out on the landscape during the fall and winter, you can help with birds and the migratory waterfowl, particularly during the fall months, and then extend that into the winter for salmon and other species. And rice lands, for example, have about 250 species that live on rice lands. So you can see that there's just a real great hope for biodiversity as we think about this harmonious way of approaching the valley. This is a Tim Collum painting up near Montana Farms, just up Highway 99. It kind of shows you some of that kind of multi-benefit management that is going on, and they're a great example of a farm, as well as Conway Ranch, who are doing all of these things for fish, birds, and of course, active farming as well. So the next piece on the surface water supplies is obviously infrastructure as we more traditionally think about it. What we've been talking about there was a lot of the nature-based solutions and that type of thing. But Sites Reservoir is a promise for this valley that we think is just great. And that's the idea of having a large regulating reservoir on the west side of the valley to be able to capture that water during some of the higher flow times and then be able to have that water available later when we need it, particularly during some of the drier times. And Sites Reservoir, I think, has some amazing momentum, a project that would just add value to everything we do in this region and would be a really nice addition to the region, similar to the way maybe Diamond Valley has utilized or Metropolitan has used Diamond Valley in Southern California or in the Bay Area of Los Vaqueros. I think these offstream reservoirs, I think, provide a real nice way to help manage water for all these different purposes going forward. And obviously, a lot of support for a Sites Reservoir. Sites is currently the water right permit is before the State Water Board, and hopefully that will be granted by the end of this year, and sites could start making some forward progress on the investment decisions that will be necessary and get this started in the next couple of years. Really exciting project. And then the kind of the final piece with respect to surface stability is, I think, effort that we have working with the State Water Board, particularly on making sure that the administrative system for water rights and for water supplies is working well. Whether it's reporting, whether it's administering the water rights system during a dry period, it's really important, obviously, for the future of this region. And we've had a really some good work that's been done. Nice partnership between the folks in the valley working with the State Water Board to help administer water rights during the last two extended dry periods. And the system really worked well in our view during that system. It's not perfect. It's kind of clunky at times, but when you put some really good people that understand this in a room to help administer that, it works out really well, and we've been able to do that during the last two dry cycles, and I think we can learn a lot from that and modernize our administration system as well as we go forward. And to me, all of those pieces come together to really help you have more surface water stability. So now, of course, switching to our groundwater resources, which we all know are really critical. We have a pathway for the future. We have a task force that convenes folks from throughout the region, the GSAs, the local water managers. Again, a lot of the folks that are working on groundwater work with conservation organizations and thinking about this and knowing that our aquifer systems are part of the natural infrastructure and really important as we go forward. So the priority right now, there's a variety of pieces, of course, with respect to groundwater. We'll be looking at demand management options. We'll be looking, obviously, at interconnected surface and groundwater. But I think right now the priority, both in the Sacramento Valley and I think it's safe to say statewide, of course, is scaling up our recharge. And again, that was called out in a variety of ways in SB 72. And so we have a real focus on that. This was a piece that was written in Maven's Notebook by Jim Mayer and Michael Saunders in the region. I think really a nice articulation of why we need groundwater recharge as we go forward in this region. And there's a lot of work that's being done going forward. So here's a list of a variety of the things that I won't go through all of these today, but there's a variety of things that have really pointed in the direction of why we need groundwater recharge and also that we need to scale this up on a much bigger strategy. I suspect many of you are involved in different pieces of this and really encourage you to keep working at it. But there's just a lot of work that's been done at the state and federal level to advance groundwater recharge. Probably our exciting effort is that about a year ago, after the governor issued an executive order encouraging recharge, DWR and the local entities in the Sacramento Valley came together to form a SAC Recharge working group. And this working group, I think, has just been a really neat way to kind of have input come from the ground up on what is needed to actually scale up groundwater recharge. What does it take to operate the Sacramento Groundwater Bank? What does it take to operate a project on the west side of the valley? And so we've had a lot of the leading folks thinking about that, working on that. They have brought forth some of their ideas. We also have some amazing work that's been done by MBK engineers to look at ways to look at different diversion criteria so that we can hopefully over time divert water more frequently when we have those wet season flows in the rivers and creeks and get that water out on the ground for recharge. And so a lot of really neat technical work on how we can maximize our water supply as we go forward. And then obviously going forward, there's also legislation that has been introduced this year by Assembly Member Aguiar Curry that is looking at some of the legislative fixes that have been identified through this group that we think would be necessary to help scale up recharge in the way that we would really like. And so just a really neat partnership of locals working with DWR. And I think it just shows the essence of how these partnerships can really drive this issue going forward. I think we all know that by the nature of the system in the Sacramento Valley, this is a PPIC table in one of their reports talking about water available for recharge. I think we can see that there is water available for recharge. We just have to be able to find the right time and place for that water. And then obviously by putting it in the ground and having it available for a later time, we will definitely provide a nice drought buffer for this region. And so as we kind of think about this from the larger kind of a policy construct, we really want to think about how do we move faster? How do we scale up recharge in the Sacramento Valley and throughout California? And of course, we need to do that. But we also, as part of this process, you need to be mindful of kind of four areas that I think are going to be embedded in legislation, will be embedded in regulatory approaches as we go forward. And that's, of course, making sure that downstream water rights are protected when you divert that water. The state and federal projects, we have a really nice working relationship with the state water contractors and the San Luis Delta Mendota Authority on the way that we can recharge during certain times and make sure that their projects are protected. Obviously, we have to have environmental flows, make sure that those are protected. In the last work that we have done through this, we have now embedded the California Environmental Flow Framework in that, an effort that's been underway, being led by UC Davis and then through the Water Board and others to look at what environmental flows might be necessary. And so we think that framework is a really nice way to think about this, and obviously making sure that tribal interests have access to this process and are very much part of it. So as you kind of think about all of these pieces we've just talked about, as we kind of think about what the California Water Plan might look like going forward for the Sacramento Valley, there's a handful of themes that I think emerge that I think are kind of neat to think about. The first is obviously we're looking at how do you manage water for multiple benefits. Again, I think a lot of the kind of the discourse around water is always trying to pit one use against another. In our view, that's just really old fashioned, really out of date. That's to me the old way that people used to conduct water policy. Now we figure out how do we make sure that all of these important purposes are addressed. And I think when you ask water managers to do this, there's nobody better to do this than ask a water manager to help. How do we make sure that all of these different important purposes of water are addressed? We're looking at things from kind of holistically, from the ridgetop to the river mouth. Of course, this is important when you think about the fires that we've had in this region over the last decade and how you need to manage those watershed lands. A lot of really neat work being done in that space that you've probably heard a lot about, as well as managing all the way to the river mouth. And of course, that's important for salmon who use that migratory corridor, as well as just making sure that we're all integrating, working together. Sun, land, and water. I think kind of the most basic concept of science and photosynthesis is that life really kind of emerges from sun, land, and water, and that's true for people. That's true for fish and wildlife, and I think that's really what is kind of we're thinking about as we think about biodiversity and trying to advance that in this region. And then one of the ways that you advance sun, land, and water is by putting water on the landscape. We're seeing that that's a really neat way to improve conditions for fish and wildlife going forward, give them a food source, give them some safe haven. Water on the landscape is important for groundwater recharge. And obviously, water on the landscape is what supports farming as well. So this is, I think, a way that we can do this. And the harmony that we talked about earlier works really well. You saw the collaboration for each one of these pieces. None of this happens without collaboration. A lot of really neat partnerships being done throughout the region. Hope folks will continue to come join that are interested to advance all of these efforts. And then I think the great thing about working in the Sacramento Valley that I love as much as anything is just working with a whole variety of passionate people that really care about the region, really care about the people, care about the fish and wildlife, care about the farming, the communities, everything that comes together. And I think that passion is really what gets me excited about this valley. And if you want to learn more, our website obviously has a lot of this information on the healthy river landscape. We also have, for those of you who want to access this QR code, we have a book of personal stories. I think it all comes together around people that are doing really neat work throughout the region, and we have captured that in a book on the stories of the Sacramento Valley that encourage you to take a look at. You'll probably know, or maybe some of those folks in this book. It's a really neat compendium. And then finally, just thinking about how do we all work together on this shared vision to bring this region to life. Such a special place, and I think we're all just really blessed to live here and work here and play here. And I'm going to stop there and would welcome any thoughts, questions, anything else that folks would like to bring, and look forward to the conversation. So thank you, Maureen, for the opportunity.
Yeah, David, thank you so very much. That was an awesome interview of all the great things going on in California, Northern California water. And the imagery is just beautiful too. Thank you for sharing all that. I think it represents our
Yeah, a lot of
area
fun.
so
Thank
well.
you.
Yeah. So, okay, a couple questions. And if you, just a reminder to our audience, if you want to submit one, you can send it to the email address that's been listed in chat. And I will start with the first one. Could you provide an example or two? There was a mention of 58 habitat projects occurring in the Bay Delta watershed. Maybe describe a little bit more of one or two of them.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Yeah, I'd love to share that whole list if anybody's interested. Todd Manley in our office is kind of the keeper of that, working with DWR. Josh Martinez over there do a really nice job of that. Yeah, it's a combination of, so there's been some really neat projects on the American River that you've probably seen through the Water Forum. So if I'm guessing most of you have seen some of their blogs on some of these recent projects, there's some real neat work on improving spawning habitat, improving kind of the way that the habitat and the flows kind of integrate on the American rivers. There's those types of projects going on in every river system right now. I think that has been really neat just to again, thinking about each life cycle stage of the salmon. And then there's a variety of work going on the landscape as well in the floodplains as well. A lot of really good work, and that's been again largely these fish food programs where we're putting water on the land to create a better food source for the fish. And again, the results so far are really promising from a scientific perspective. So anyway, those are kind of the two kind of general examples, and there's quite a few others as well, and be happy to share a whole list if anybody's interested.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a question. Do you see sediment deposition in activated bypasses as primarily a benefit for rebuilding floodplain elevation and soil health, or could it eventually create surface stability and conveyance challenges that require active management?
Wow, good question. Boy, I don't know if I know the answer to that. Boy, it sounds like somebody has some expertise on that that I'd probably benefit from. I guess the thing I will just offer is we are going to be testing some of this. Obviously, the Fremont Weir has already been notched, and they'll be testing that over in the Yolo bypass and some work being done over there. And then eventually, I think we'll hopefully see similarly over in the Teasdale Weir notch to go into the Sutter bypass as well. And so I think the way we've thought about it is obviously the timing of those flows entering the bypasses. Again, these are during non-flood stages. I think will be really important. And then at least what we're working on through both the kind of the floodplain work as well as through the healthy river and landscape is working with the landowners within the bypass on how do you manage that surface level. And obviously that will require some checks, will require some weirs to help kind of manage those flows in a creative way. And obviously, there's a lot that's going on there, as folks know. Some are trying to manage for a duck club, so you want a certain water depth for a duck club. We're going to be managing some of that for fish food. You want a little bit of a different depth for that. And so I think the hope is that through these local landowners, whether they're a farmer or a duck club, that we can kind of help work with the surface elevation to keep that water level at the best optimal level for whatever purpose that landowner is trying to do there, largely around again fish and wildlife and helping with fish and wildlife. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. If you have some other thoughts on that, I'd be very interested in learning more on that.
Great. Let's see, there's a question. Could you elaborate on any of the bigger challenges of these programs you covered?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I think the California challenges we all know about in 2026 is affordability. Right? So I think we just need to start there. That is pervasive across every aspect of our society. And I think it definitely enters into the water space, as we all know. And I think trying to make, I think of things like Sites Reservoir. Sites Reservoir has to be affordable at some level, or people are not going to invest in it. And so I think the affordability dynamic, landowners and board members of water agencies, of course, across the region are staring at rate increases, staring at assessments all the time to think about how do you fund some of this work going forward. Whether it's work under Sigma for groundwater management, whether it's floodplain work, whether it's just modernization of the water system. So I think affordability is going to be our largest challenge going forward is my read. And then I also think that we have kind of aging infrastructure as well as in kind of an aging regulatory structure. And I think we spent a lot of time, obviously, trying to modernize infrastructure, and there's a big effort being done there to keep infrastructure safe and modern. And then I think over time we do a lot of work to really do workarounds around through regulatory processes. And in California, we all know that we have a lot of regulation, a lot of effort there, and so I think the real art of water management is going to be able to navigate those regulatory environments and to be able to do the things that we need to be doing for the benefit of this region, but do so obviously within that current regulatory structure. So hopefully that's those are three that hopefully are helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Particularly appreciate the affordability piece.
Yeah.
Does your association have an opinion on raising Shasta Dam? I understand there are issues related to flooding tribal lands. Maybe talk about the pros and cons.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, boy, Shasta, there's obviously been a lot of conversations. I think from where we sit, we have a task force that actually works on this, and so it's been very much of a kind of a thought process. And basically, is what we think that is needed around Shasta is a whole suite of things that people think about, and that includes things like reintroduction opportunities up into the McCloud River. Obviously, a lot of focus has been devoted to that. And some really good work with Chief Sisk and her team up at the Winneman Wintu and what that could look like going forward. There's a lot of really neat work being done on Battle Creek. There's a Battle Creek working group that's working on how do we make Battle Creek a more effective system for fish and wildlife. And so I think, and then I think, we just need to probably figure out a way to operate Shasta a little more effectively. I think we've been operating Shasta in a lot of ways for temperature management, and I think we're going to have to figure out a better way to do that going forward. So the temperature management is one consideration, but there's a lot of other things that Shasta needs to be managed for as we go forward. And so I think when you think about it in that context, then I think you then ask that next question of, would a raise of the infrastructure itself help with those processes? And I think if it does, then I think it could fit in really nicely as part of this kind of larger program around how we can better manage Shasta Lake.
Okay. And let's see, do you have any opinions on how state and federal agencies have been willing or able to work towards collaborative solutions?
Well, boy, we have a lot of really good examples. I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I think you saw the floodplain forward. I'll just start there. I mean, again, all these state and federal agencies are coming together. I know right now it's kind of more fashionable to think about all the acrimonious stuff that's going on between the federal and state administration. But boy, in our space, we're seeing nothing but really good collaboration across almost every one of these programs. I think that is something that can probably get better over time. I do think that's something that the water plan, I think, might actually be helpful with, or we're hoping it will, is that it can kind of help us kind of better define what those roles and responsibilities are as we go forward. I think there's certain things that federal and state agencies do really well, and they can be doing more effectively going forward. And then I think there's certain things that we know that local agencies do better and need to be doing, very specifically out on the ground, tailored for their particular effort. And then how those kind of work together is I think a real, a lot of the work we do ahead is going to be based on that. So I think there's a lot of great work that's being done, but let's build on that and make that work forward. And I think I'll just say it because it's maybe kind of embedded in all this. I mean, we all know where the courthouse is. We all know that you can stand up in front of a regulatory agency and like something or dislike it, but there's no substitute for getting in a room with people and figuring out how to solve a problem. And I think we're really good at that when we take that path.
Great. So let's see, the California Climate Assessment projects significant declines in snowpack in the future. What strategies are being investigated to respond to this in the Northern Valley? And can you relate this to the legislative goal you mentioned about finding 9 million acre feet?
Yeah, boy, that's the good question. That is the question. Well, boy, I hope that everything I've talked about in some ways is addressing that question because it's sure designed to. I think specifically, I mean, you think about a site's reservoir. Again, that's not really a snow-fed project, so that's a rain-fed project. So I think that is a good example of being able to have that water available in a site's reservoir when you needed it. That water, if we're going to have to replace a certain amount of snowpack that's not available, boy, it'd sure be nice to have that water sitting in a site's reservoir going into a dry cycle. I think that's a given. The groundwater recharge, I think, is probably the most prominent of that. And again, I think the scale of groundwater recharge in the state is pretty amazing. There's obviously a lot of groundwater recharge that's been done all over the state for years, but I think as Sigma has, I think, brought this into focus and this idea of balancing our groundwater resources, I think recharge is only going to get more and more important. And again, I think if we can find the right times to take that water off the water course and be able to recharge it in the ground. I think that's going to be our single, probably best way to address the climate variability that was embedded in the question. Hopefully, all
Uh,
these strategies are part of that, but those are two that I think are pretty vivid. Yeah.
yeah, I've been following along with the water plan, and for sure it seems like you're on top of all these pieces that are coming into the water plan, what you've mentioned. Related to that, the drier strategy and the 2028 water plan call for increasing capture of urban stormwater runoff. Municipal separate storm sewer system permittees look to capture urban runoff to reduce surface water quality impacts, particularly through smaller scale infiltration practices or neighborhood scale like green streets. How can these permittees connect with water suppliers to create larger scale capture where it's not currently occurring?
Yeah, good question. Well, boy, I'll just be honest. That's not my expertise. I know it's something that the OWP does really well. So, I think that's probably more in your wheelhouse than mine. But I have no doubt that it's very important, everything that was just described there. But I think I'll let others speak to that because that's not my area of expertise.
All right. Yeah, we're working on it.
Yep, yep, yep. I know you guys are
It,
doing a lot of
it,
neat work on it.
yeah,
So,
like you said, it's one conversation at a time. Put your heads
yeah.
together, right? Yeah. Let's see. What types of modernization and updates are going on for California's water rights systems?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work that's been done there, and I had the screen shot there of a article that we did a couple of years ago. Darren Cordova with MBK and myself, and we tried to put together some thoughts on what exactly that looks like. So I kind of recommend that for a little bit more of a detailed dive, and we're going to be updating that because I think it's a document that I think would be kind of neat to bring forward. I think there's a variety of things being done at the water board. Obviously, there's been a lot of digitization that hopefully will be helpful over time. There's still all, vaults of paper files and all that. And I think, simple things, or not simple things, but basic things like digitizing is very important. State Water Board has a new program, their Cal Waters program, that I think is a real attempt to kind of modernize kind of the way that business is done over there. That program's kind of just getting kind of test driven as we speak. So I think hopefully that will just get better over time to look at that a little bit better. And then I think there's a lot of reporting that goes on in California, and I think we have to figure out a way to whether it's through things like AI or something else, but I think we have to find a better way to take all the information that's reported in California and be able to use that. I know a lot of people are working on things like dashboards and that kind of thing as a
Hmm.
kind of a more accessible format to understand those kinds of things. So I think but anyway, I think the State Water Board's making a real concerted effort, and give them a lot of credit for working in that modernization space. And we're trying to work with them as well to help where we can.
All right. And I think you've touched on this a little bit, but maybe if you could expand, how should California rethink bypass management in a future with more extreme precipitation variability, especially if bypasses are expected to serve simultaneously as flood infrastructure, habitat recharge areas, and productive farmland?
Well, boy, I thank you. Great question. Boy, I think the bypasses just have so much kind of reimagination in front of us. Obviously, I think let's step back. I mean, I think they're one of the most ingenious systems that were ever built in California. I mean, to think that you have a system that was engineered at the time that they were engineered to basically shunt water away from the city of Sacramento and other areas, and they work just amazingly well, right? I mean, they're just brilliant. And so kudos to the engineers in those days who kind of thought about that and made them all work. So I think we start with a really neat structure that works generally quite well for flood protection. Of course, flood protection, I mean, we're in flood mode such a small percentage of the time. So the question becomes, how do you reimagine those bypasses during the rest of that time? And I think that's what was kind of the question was leading towards is, again, can we reactivate those floodplains through the combination of the notched weirs with the management down in the bypasses with respect to checks and weirs and that type of thing to help kind of put that water on the landscape. I think there's just so much opportunity ahead. We'd love to scale that up a lot quicker than we currently can. There's a lot of work that's being done there now, but a lot more that we can do going forward. There's obviously duck clubs down there that I think are just really important and I think a really neat way to think about that as we go forward. And then obviously people are farming in the bypasses. So, and I think we can do all of those things under the kind of the vision that we have under floodplain forward to be able to manage those. So, boy, if folks have ideas on how we can reimagine the bypass, I think this is a really good time in our history to be thinking about that. And it's kind of almost a blank slate, it looks like to me on that. So let's get to work at it.
All right. That is all the questions that we had. Thanks so much for fielding them and all the information sharing today. Um, with that, on behalf of Office of Water Programs and all of today's participants, thank everyone for both volunteering your time and delivering such an informative presentation. We appreciate everyone who joined us today. I hope you guys all have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Take care.